Is waiting again. Yeah, no, I was trying to figure something out and I could not figure it out, and so I just gave up because that's what logical people do after a while. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes, let a couple people get in here. I don't want this to go very long because I want this video to be like an episode, so I want it to be functional. If it's 2 or 3 hours, it'll be very difficult to get people to watch it after it's not live. But this was a subject that I actually shot a video about a couple days ago, and I thought to myself, it would be better served to do this video live because no matter what, even though I don't edit and do all those things, some people would be convinced that I was somehow staging things with the animals as we discuss these topics. And even though those of you that watch the channel enough or have seen me work with snakes enough know that I'm not doing that and know that, I can just reach in and grab these snakes and do whatever, I figured it would be better served to do it live. A, you get to see the snakes more, and B, like I said, just for people that maybe it's their first time or people that are really stuck in this mindset that they have to move their snakes to feed because of cage aggression, that they can see that, that's not necessarily something we have to do. Hello to Canada. How are we doing? Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll grab some snakes out. We'll talk about it a little. At the end, what I'd like to do is try to take Electra out because Electra is typically my most food responsive animal outside of feeding situations. Now, of course, for this video, she's going to make a total liar out of me because it is live, 1, and 2. That's just the way animals go. But I just want to show you how an animal that's super food responsive can still be handled and still put them in a situation to use their head and to think and to recognize what's going on. I'm sorry, I'm missing some comments here. Shout out to Mr. Zach Green here. Also, for the record, you see this shirt? It fits fine. I have plenty of room. Zach told me maybe I need a bigger shirt when I ordered this one. So I just want to throw that out there, mister, if you see this. Hello, Matt. Hello, Val. Hello, Jack. We're both wearing Zach's shirts. Oh, that's really romantic. I said hello to Selena. Well, I called her Canada, but, basically that's where she's from. So it's kind of like Zombieland, Columbus, Canada. What's the difference? So basically we'll start off with some of the smaller animals. We'll move to Electra at the end and a few in between. So the controversy is that, by feeding a snake in its enclosure, people are convinced that that triggers the snake to then become what we call cage aggressive. And I hate the term about quit watching football for this. Yeah, that's college football. It's they're not even getting paid. They're not even putting their max effort out there. But yeah, so I hate the term cage aggression. Obviously, I used it for the sake of the video because that's what people call it. But it's really a stupid term because, as we know, snakes are not really capable of being aggressive. They are defensive. The difference between defensive and aggressive, if snakes were aggressive, you'd be sitting on your porch outside watching the sunset. A snake would come hauling ass out of the woods to attack you, and that doesn't happen. Snake bites happen because you entered into the snake's territory, you tried to pick up the snake, accidentally stepped on it, stepped too close, whatever the case may be, and the snake is defending itself or its immediate area. And so that is a defensive behavior. So us taking an animal and putting it into a cage, giving that animal that's its space, and then we come in there and it defends itself, aggression's not the right word for that. It doesn't make sense. It's not what aggression is. So cage defensive is a better term. Certain species are more prone to this than others. White lips are notoriously cage defensive, meaning even the calmest of white lips, when you go into their cage, there's usually a period of 10 seconds to a minute to just the transition of getting them out where they're much more high-strung, much more defensive, much more racy, musking, biting. It's just that transition period. Once you get them outside of that space, all of a sudden a lot of them calm down. Not all of them. Some of them are just very high-strung animals. And so what we have to determine, let me see Caleb's thing here. Got me interested in short-tailed blood pythons. Didn't even know they were a species until early last year. I love the Sumatran short-tails. There will be some Sumatran short-tails coming up in just a minute. So stay tuned for that. And I'm happy to see that I got you into short-tails. I think they're wonderful. Zach likes them too. So do a lot of you guys that are in here in the chat. Don't forget, as we've discussed in the last live video, don't forget if you're in here, you're enjoying it, hit that like button. Also, don't forget you can share this video on your social media or whatever. Get some other people in here. Don't be afraid to do that. More as well. Blood's over everything. Let's not get too carried away. We'll debate that later. Thank you, whoever just hit that like button. Much appreciated. Not a fan of them. Yeah, okay, Mike. Spent an awful lot of money for somebody that's not a fan. So what we have to determine is when we're dealing with a snake that's behaving in a manner where it's biting you when you're entering its cage, it's for one of two reasons. It's for food or it's for defense. And so you have to determine which one of those things is causing the behavior, because you can't correct something when you don't understand it. So you need to look at the animal's body language, how they're going into the strike. After they bite, are they biting you rapidly multiple times and retreating? Are they biting and wrapping? Biting and wrapping is typically going to be something that's going to happen with a food response. A quick bite and let go and get out of there is usually more of a defensive bite. Posture and positioning can be telltale signs too. An animal that's looking at you as a food source is typically going to slowly take ground towards you, whereas an animal that's in a defensive mode might try to take ground, but it's trying to take a little ground so it can retreat. And that's its ultimate goal, is to get out of there, but it wants to put enough distance between you so that when it turns to flee, you can't get a hold of it when it's vulnerable. And you don't see that as much with short tails. Some extent you will. Certainly with more high-strung animals. My animals are typically not like that. I only have one really, really, truly angry, vile short tail here right now, which is my T-positive ivory female. And I'm working with her slowly at her pace, and I don't know if she's ever going to come around, but I'll put in the time and see what happens. But basically, yeah, you see it with rat snakes or colubrids, things like that. Well, they'll really be very, very bold and look like they're trying to advance on you, but they're just trying to get you to back up enough where they can turn, tuck tail, and get out of there. In the words of Captain Jack Sparrow there, fight to run away. So that's what they're often doing, is defending themselves enough to create that space and get away. That's their ultimate goal, is to get away from you. Unless they're looking at you as a food source, in which case they're often going to be trying to close that ground, get closer slowly, get into strike range, and then go. Now, it's not often that our snakes truly lock onto us as a food source. It's typically very much a mistake. They're just coming out in a mode where they're expecting food for whatever reason, and your warmth is enough to just kind of give them that confirmation, like, hey, there might be something edible here. So that's where we want to get them into that thinking zone where they're processing and deciding, is this food, is this something else? So behind me here we have a rack. I've got 3 Sumatran short tails in here, but I said we're going to start with some smaller stuff. So we will, who do I have in here that we could grab? Let's see how this lady is. Now she's a fairly defensive animal. This is my female goldeneye holdback. So what I'm going to do is come in here. I'm going to touch her, and I'm just moving her body a little bit, enough to let her know that it's not food. Which she knows right away now, because food doesn't do that to her. And so now she's not in a food mode, but she still is a defensive animal, and so it would not be outside the realm of impossible for her to offer a defensive bite. You can see her posture. She's not really moving much. She's mostly holding still. Her eyes are fixed on my face right now, and she's watching me. And if I try to turn her away, she's either going to think about taking ground and getting out of here, or she's going to turn where she can keep an eye on me and keep an eye on anything that she feels is a threat. So she's not looking to be mean or anything, but she is nervous. The vibration of my voice is coming right at her, and so she's positioned herself where she could strike at me if she thinks that she is in danger. And if I put her closer to my face, she probably would strike. But obviously, I don't want to put her into that position. She's only struck at me once, which was on a video with you guys earlier this year outside. Other than that, she hasn't. Now already, she's calming down to some degree, getting a little bit more curious, less upset, but still in a defensive-minded mode where those tongue flicks are going very rapidly, and she's still assessing whether this is a dangerous situation or not. So what you want to do is keep these experiences as positive as possible, and that's going to build for the future and get you in a position where in her mind she starts to learn that this isn't so bad, that this is safe. She still hasn't gone through her first shed yet, which I'm very, very looking forward to. This snake is going to be absolutely gorgeous in the future. But still, not overly nervous, more comfortable each time I deal with her. And so we're going to put her away in a second here because obviously I don't want to get her to that point where she needs to be defensive, but I'll let you guys get a decent look at her. She's got such incredible sides. And when you see I'm coming with my hand from kind of underneath, I'm not coming over the top of her. I'm not coming right at her face. I'm not trying to make movements that suggest that I'm a predator. You know, predators and prey alike know where the dangerous the dangerous ends of other animals are. And so she knows that a predator is going to approach and try to neutralize that. So if I approach her in that manner, then I can make them very nervous. And that's why you'll see a lot of species are head shy, where they don't like their heads touched. At this point in time, obviously I'm not going to intentionally touch the top of her head, but as she gets older and more comfortable, that is something that I'll work in situations where she kind of thinks it was her idea in a sense. I'm just going to go ahead and put her back. Get your tail in there, Missy. Come on. Come on. Thank you. So, you know, letting her crawl through your hands, and as she's crawling through, you just slowly kind of come down and brush the top lightly, no pressure, not really anything threatening. You're not trying to make the animal feel like they're in a dangerous situation. So I know we're a little off topic, but it all ties in where the more comfortable your animal is in interactions with you, the more comfortable your animal is in its enclosure, the less issues you're going to have. A stressed animal is always going to be more apt to default to defensive behavior, whereas an unstressed animal is going to be much more open to handling situations, much more open to change, much more open to, you know, inconveniences to its life. You know, and it's no different with us. I've said this to you guys before. When you're stressed out about everything in life, the littlest thing can break you. And these animals may not be us, but they're the same way. If they're in a constant state of stress where they can never just relax, then those little things that they might normally let go are going to really, really stress them out. And so you want to try to keep them, when they're in their caging, at the lowest level of stress that you can. And you can do that by providing proper conditions, you know, clean, safe water, ample food source when it's time for them to eat, you know, the ability of them to thermoregulate or having them at a really ideal temperature, and obviously security above all else. Snakes that are secure and comfortable are less likely to be cage defensive and less likely to exhibit behavior that we're trying to avoid. Now you saw I reached in, I touched her, I didn't do anything fancy. She's been sitting there, I haven't touched that snake in 3 days, maybe longer, and nothing adverse. You saw her go into thinking mode, process, start to move around a little bit. No difference with these guys here, Sumatran shorttails. Another reason I wanted to do this video live at night is because these animals tend to be more food responsive after dark than they are prior to. So I wanted them to be in like their most food responsive mode so that you guys can see that feeding them in their cage is not creating any kind of problem for them, that I'm able to do what I need to do. Make sure you guys can see that cage over there. I'll try to stay off to the side as much as I can. So we got a male Sumatran shorttail here. He's over here on this side of the cage. I am going to just reach in, touch him, pick him right up. Absolutely no adverse behavior whatsoever. Doesn't try to bite me. And this is a snake, I promise you, if you put food in front of him, he will levitate into the air and grab it. Sumatran shorttails do not fuck around when it comes to eating. They are very, very food responsive animals. So you can see absolutely no defensive behavior because he's comfortable with me. He's comfortable with his environment. You'll see the tongue engaged, the eyes engaged, his head following movement right now, paying attention to everything going on because he just transitioned from relaxing in his cage to all of a sudden he's out and about. Let me check on some comments here. I just want to say, you're doing a video on this. Oh, no problem. Speaking of thermoregulation, what is your take on the whole hot side, cool side versus the room set at one solid temp and never changing? I'm not sure how I feel about that. So obviously I do a lot of ambient. I think in the future when I set up a new snake room that I'm probably going to move away from that. I'm going to keep the room at an ambient temperature still that I think is on the lower end of their ideal. And then I'm going to give them hot spots and you know, operate that way. For gravid females, I always try to give them a hot spot. Certain morphs within the Borneo shorttails that I think need the digestive aid of the additional temperature I have on it. And then in other rooms where I have snakes, obviously I do keep some different ways. But I think ultimately, if we're looking at the thing that's best for the individual animal, I think the ability to thermoregulate within a range is probably ideal. It's the most natural thing. Obviously, I don't think it's detrimental to their health or well-being to keep them at an appropriate ambient temperature. But I think if you give them the option, one, it encourages movement with a sedentary species. I think that could be a good thing. Get them moving around more, get that system stretching out, that lung stretching out. So I think that's a good thing. I think it just encourages them to think a little bit more. You know, think, this isn't so comfortable anymore, but if I go over here, it's going to be more in line with what I want. I notice them doing it even within the ambient setup because even though it's ambient, the heat's coming from one direction to the other. So oftentimes the very back of the enclosure is a little bit cooler, and we might only be talking about half of a degree to maybe a degree and a half at most, but it's just enough that you'll still see them utilize the different microclimates within that. You know, like after I come in here and feed everybody, if I open the ARS racks, they're typically forward, closer to the heat. A few days later and every other time, they're typically towards the back. And almost all of them are that way, towards the back, towards the front. Some of them will always be in the back even after meals, but I do see a lot more of them up front. Same thing in the tubs here. My big female matrix Het T positive is forward right now. She's in a shed cycle. I tend to find when they're in a shed cycle, they tend to seek out a little bit more warmth. My feeling on that is it probably just speeds up the process a little bit more. And obviously they want to get through their shed cycles quickly because they're vulnerable. They can't see, which is a disadvantage to hunting, a disadvantage to survival. So I do notice that behavior as well with them. I thought I was logging into snake bites. Yeah, hold on. No, not here. Oh my God, let me mishandle this until it bites me, which this snake's not going to do because, you know, it's a Sumatran shorttail. But, you know, holding them in certain ways like this is very unnatural for them. Like I said, these Sumatrans really tolerate just about anything. But if you do that with if I had done that with the GoldenEye, she definitely would have freaked the fuck out. And so unfortunately, some of these people manipulate these animals in ways knowing it's going to get them to react to kind of get those views and act like, oh my God, I can't believe how mean this snake is when, you know, you just created it and turned it into that. So yeah, definitely the wrong place, Kyle, sorry. But I mean, we can do the same with another Sumatran, just reach in there and grab them. Now, obviously, I'm not advising you if you don't have a good relationship with your animals and you don't understand their behavior to just do what I'm necessarily doing. I'm just saying that once you get to a point, you know, feeding these animals in their cage is not what creates that behavior. They are opportunistic feeders, so if you give them an opportunity to eat, they're going to take it, especially when they're comfortable. So now if I did the same thing with these snakes and I reached in and wiggled my fingers in front of their face, probably going to bite me. Because that's going to be more of a food situation. When I touch them, once I put my hands on them, they recognize the fact that they're not eating. So here we have another Sumatran shorttail. She is very much asleep. Reach in. grab her. She's like, bro, I'm chilling. Nothing, no adverse reaction, tongue flicking, checking things out, but totally cool. No food response, no defensive behavior. Just like, what the hell? I was totally asleep. You know, once again, if I had a rat right here and put it in front of her, she would take it right now, no questions asked, guaranteed 100%. These snakes are very, very food responsive, but I'm not presenting them with a feeding opportunity. I'm presenting them with a handling opportunity, and they know the difference because the key to all of this, I hate this rack, I'm sorry, baby girl, bear with me, take out the whole tower up there. The key to all this is consistency. Consistent behavior on our part helps them learn routine and process. And so every single time you're feeding, you should be doing the same thing. Every single time you're handling, you should be doing the same thing, but those two things should not be the same. If you're in a setup where you're using a PVC cage with either drop-down doors or sliding doors or a vision cage or anything that has two doors, feed in one door, handle from the other door. Every single time, consistent 100%, your animals will learn the routine. That does not mean that you can just assume that a food response is not going to happen in the handling door, because you could have an animal for 10 years that doesn't present with a food response, and all of a sudden one night it's hungry, it's hopped up, and boom, you're not paying attention. You think you can take a liberty, you're talking to somebody over here, you reach in, and then all of a sudden you got a snake wrapped around your hand. So that will happen, and that's a lapse on you. That's not a lapse on the snake. They are opportunistic feeders, so you need to make sure that they're not in that mode, and that you're doing things appropriately. Yesterday, my baby Joan carpet clamped down on my finger, held me for about 5 minutes, and drew blood. I think that means he likes me. Yeah, that's just a hug. I've had very few snakes over the years actually coil in a food response and stay coiled for long periods of time. Olive pythons, if you get bit by an olive, 9 times out of 10 you're getting wrapped. Probably more than that. It's probably like 999 times out of 1,000. I've never had an olive python try to bite me in a defensive manner. I've had them bite and wrap me quite a few times. Callie here. Sorry, been MIA for a while. That's okay. Welcome back. We all have our shit going on in life and have to lay low for a while. It's a little bit tougher having this because I go through my own shit, but you got to try to stay consistent on this stuff or it doesn't really work. So welcome back. Let me catch up on some comments here. If you don't have double doors with just trying to do sides work, or is there thinking not quite that complex? I think it could possibly work, depending on the species and the animal. I mean, if you have like a Thai bamboo rat and you're trying to do this, I don't think that snake has the brain capacity to figure that kind of stuff out. Short tails are pretty intelligent animals. T-time, T-positive ivory time. No, the Batik is in with the Matrix hat. I got to take him out. He's been paired up, so he is not one that I can grab right now. Cheers from Ontario, Canada. Canadians coming in strong. But yeah, so I do think with certain species and animals, you could make that work. Now, obviously, if you have established snakes where whatever you've been doing has worked, then you don't necessarily need to change things. Caleb, how often do you feed your subadult short tails? So it depends. I don't feed on a set schedule. I feed kind of on body condition, individual metabolism of the animal. But just for a generic, probably every 10 to 14 days, depending on the size of the subadult. If we're talking like 1.5 to 2, once they get to that 2.5, 3, I'll slow it down even more, typically 14 to 20 days between feedings. But I vary it. There might be times where they're eating twice in a week and then times where they're not eating for 3 or 4 weeks. I do try to make sure every single snake that's above the age of about 1.5 years goes through a fasting period every year. Nothing extended, but enough for their body to really clean out, kind of reset, let their system completely get back to its default settings, and then start feeding again. So I I don't feed on a set schedule. So anything short tail wise could eat as often as a week, could eat as long as a month. Obviously, breeding females go on a period after ovulation where I don't offer food until after they lay their clutch. So that's a couple of months that they're not eating typically. Sometimes I don't catch an ovulation and they'll keep feeding. How do you judge body condition for feeding? I try to do it, but I can never tell if I'm doing it right. I mean, if the snake looks too thin or too fat, then adjust accordingly. Short tails are a little bit more difficult because they can go from like, holy shit, they look huge, to holy shit, they look skinny in one poop. So I think it just comes with experience over time and learning the individual animal's cycle. They all are pretty routine if you handle them in a routine manner, and keep conditions basically the same. Obviously, for me, a breeding female, I want to be a little heavier than a breeding male, as far as body width goes and size. Another thing to keep in mind is, like us, when we get fat, our fat is over our ribs. Snakes is often under their ribs. So when you see a snake that's really obese, the concern is actually what you don't see. And that's why fatty liver disease and things like that kill a ton of snakes in captivity, because basically what happens is that fat grows all around the organs and basically restricts the organs from functioning properly. Mix in too small of a cage and the snakes are not moving around enough and stretching their lungs out, and now you've got that further restriction in there. You're asking yourself to get into a series of possibly respiratory infections, other issues. But a lot of snakes that are dying that should be living 25, 30 years are dying at 7, 8, 10 years old because of fatty liver disease, which you can Google and go through and find a lot of images and see what it actually looks like when they do these necropsies on these animals. Once again, reminding you guys, hit that like button, keep pushing that algorithm out. Appreciate that. Those of you that have, the 16 of you, thank you. If you haven't yet and you're enjoying the video, you're learning something, or you just want to piss me off, whatever it is, I'm with it. Obesity is huge. Yeah, obesity is a massive problem. Short tails are really, really easy to get overweight. They typically do not refuse food. They will eat 4 times a week if you feed them 4 times a week. And their metabolism is super slow. They're super sedentary animals, which obviously is a recipe for obesity very easily. That's why I like to handle my snakes fairly regularly. And regularly doesn't have to be every week, but just often enough that they're moving, they're stretching some muscles. Take them out, swim them once in a while when you soak them. Just let them work that muscle tone. If they're comfortable outside and you have a safe environment to take them outside and the conditions are right, that's a good thing to do, to get them, just to kind of encourage them to move around. It's good for their brain. It's good for their physical body as well. Thank you guys for hitting that like button. Much appreciated. Let me go back and see. I'm sure I missed some comments. Some people. Obesity is huge in pets in general. Yes, it is, and it's really sad that people are like, "Oh, look how cute this little fat pet is." It's like, no, you're killing it. I'd be more active in the chat, but I've been forced into a game of who pooped in the snake room. Yeah, right now my snake room is pretty good. Pretty much everybody in the ARS rack is good right now. I got a few babies over here that I need to do and smaller stuff. Not much in the way of poop, but definitely saw a couple that peed that I haven't gotten to yet today. And then my stuff in the other rooms are good right now too. And my adults, it looks like Sambuca, Big Red, and Raiden need to be cleaned. Everybody else is good. Sambuca, it looks like, let out a urate. Big Red shed, and I can see some shed, which means she probably peed. And it looks like Raiden peed. And obviously they don't really pee, but you know what I mean. Hello, Mandy. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad I caught it. We're glad you're here. Welcome. Still feeding the 3.5-year-olds every 2 weeks. I'm knocking down our ivory to a medium. Yeah, adults I feed varied right now. I'm hitting the females a little bit harder with the breeding season, but well, actually I'm kind of slowing back down now. I hit them hard a couple weeks ago. Hi, man. Cheers from Ontario. Did I catch you already? Another Ontario. I think there was somebody else. But Mr. Barbell Boa is in the house. Much appreciated for stopping by. We talked about the jungle carpet. We talked about thermoregulation. Sumatra buds are awesome too. Yes, they are. Obviously I have a variety of stuff. So let's reach in and grab some more snakes here. Let's get a Borneo out. We'll go with this guy down here. This little white ghost produced by Ryan Rumbley. He's a little bit more of a high-strung animal than the Sumatrans, but obviously no problem just reaching in and grabbing him. And you can see very much, if you guys know Ghost and Ultra and all that type of stuff, you can see the influence all up and down this animal. Not sure what I'm going to do with him yet as far as breeding goes. I was actually considering maybe putting him to one of my skunk line girls and playing around with that. But once again, no food response, reaching in there, no defensive behavior whatsoever. Like I said, I wanted to do this live so you guys can see that these animals are reacting the way they always do, just based on how they're kept and worked with. Sorry. Sanitized up. But yeah, so like I said, if the animal get Electra out, and Electra hopefully is going to be Electra. With my luck, she'll be going into shed or something. It's just the way it always goes. But if she's Electra, she will rise right out of the cage. She will come forward right at me, very, very clear that she's looking for food. I should have actually started thawing some food, and then you'd really see a lot more activity in this room. It's really funny. I can bring live rodents in this room and get nothing. Maybe 3 or 4 snakes start cruising. I start thawing food 2 rooms away. Within about 15 minutes, you come in here and all these snakes in the ARS are pushing and cruising. All these guys are front and center waiting for food. You open tubs, everybody comes swinging out with a vengeance. So it's pretty incredible to see how much these animals learn the routine. So the rodent smell is just ever so slightly different of a frozen thawed to a live rodent. They don't eat live. They don't pay attention to it. Now, I'm not saying if I threw a live rodent in there that they're not going to be opportunistic and take it, because many of them would. Some of them will not eat live. The T-positive ivories, not at all, not a chance. I have a few others that just have no interest in live whatsoever. But everybody in here is all about the frozen thawed. Do you produce your own rodents? No, I don't. I used to years ago, and honestly, it's so much work, and I just don't have the time or the hassle. And right now, it's so expensive and so hard to get supplies that I've just been buying everything. And I try to just stock up when I can. Pay attention if Rodent Pro has a sale on something. I'll lean and stock that up and then mix in with some local suppliers. But I try to feed a variety, as I've gone over before. I feed mice, rats, quail, chicks, rabbits, guinea pigs, just about anything. I have babies almost every season that will not take live at all. I have to start them on frozen thawed, because I always just offer live the first several feedings, try to get in. But those T-positive ivories bug out if anything's live. They want it dead, and that's it. If you take it dead, a lot of them, they won't take off of tongs, typically. They will for birds. Quail and chicks, they will take off the tongs. Rats, they won't. So a rat, you have to leave in there, shut the tub, and they go over immediately, need it, but they won't take rats off the tongs. Maybe the male, I don't think, ever has. The female may have twice in her life. And with her, she's just more aggressive with food. So she will take it a couple of times here and there, but not really much. They wait for you to put it down. I've had other adults that were like that. It's weird. Let me see. Single and broke right now. What's single have to do with it? You just trying to advertise on my channel right now? I don't know about that, Selena. I don't know about you. So, let's see. Obviously, we need to grab my favorite little dude here. Would not be happy doing a video and not grab him out. So we're going to come up here, get him. Once again, reach in, touch them. Now, one thing that I'm doing, as I mentioned, you don't want to approach from their face. Now it doesn't matter, he's out. When I'm reaching in to pick them up and he's sitting there, I'm putting my hand about here, the first third of his body, and picking up like that. And I do that consistently every time with them from the same basic spot on their body, which really helped. Polly and Broke, what's good? Yeah, see, it doesn't matter. Broke knows no bounds. No, I get what you were saying. I just thought it was funny that you said that. But hey, being single and paying all the bills beats supporting somebody else's deadbeat ass, all right? But yeah, so I always try to pick up from the same part of the body, be consistent once again. It tells them immediately what's going on. If I'm feeding them, I'm not going to take the tongs and touch that part of the body with them or the food. I'm going to present it straight ahead at their face, let them see it. And so it's a different approach. Everything that's happening is different, and as different as it can be, so that these animals recognize what's going on, and they can use their brain and figure it out. They're very, very intelligent animals. They know what's going on. This little guy is just the best. He's so funny because he's always so engaged with his environment and everything that's going on around him at all times. He's always watching. He's always paying attention. He's always curious about what's touching him, where it's coming from, where he can go to. But never any adverse reaction in this animal. And it's funny because if you watch his body language, you look at his eyes, you can see that stuff makes him nervous, but he never reacts to it. He always gets nervous, he thinks, and he goes, all right, this is okay. So it's not that he's not getting nervous. It's just that he is comfortable enough to process what's happening before becoming reactive. A lot of times you have those snakes with the hair trigger, it's because they're reacting without thinking. It's just instinct. So you've got to get them away from that. You've got to get them away from that situation where they feel like they have to rely on their instinct and just go. You want to get them into a mode where they're going, I don't like this, but let me think about it. So sometimes that means backing up a little bit, giving them a little distance. It means confidence. It means not being overbearing. Once again, not coming in at their face. Like I said, this animal doesn't matter, but other animals of mine, if I came in at their head like that, not going to go so well. Him, I can do whatever I want, and he really doesn't care. But that's, once again, the relationship that I've built with this animal. And that doesn't mean that I can't get him into a situation where he won't revert to instinct or won't bite. People get, oh, will it bite? It has teeth that can bite. I can bite. You can bite. The snake can bite. My dog can bite at any given time. So what we're looking for are patterns of behavior, and they're looking for patterns of behavior in us. So it's just as important. What are you doing, dude? Checking me out? I'm kick-ass, and you know it. You know it. But yeah, so he's just a wonderful animal. Hoping next year he'll be a lot bigger, and maybe he'll be one of my few males that breeds early. Mine tend to go later than earlier, probably mostly because I do feed a little bit lighter than most people. But yeah, he is just awesome. I mean, how can you not like that? Plus, look how cool he is. The camera always robs so much of his color and so much of what he has going on. But one of the reasons that I do think that he carries the sideswipe gene, even though it's hard to see, is that broken up neck pattern that he has there that a lot of sideswipe stuff gets, and even more so on this side. Let me see if I can turn him around. So it's tough though, because a lot of ghost line and ultraline stuff can get similar too, and that's floating around in here. But I think that the two are competing with each other for kind of dominance within the space on this animal. Oh, that was a quick movement for you. Did you not like that touch? But yeah, so I think they're competing with space here, and I think that's what's happening and why you see the lower expression kind of broken up there and not that classic side swipe, like really, really clean side pattern like you would see on Callisto or Orion or Atlas. So it'll be interesting once I can breed him. Obviously, I've got to put him to a non-side swipe animal so I can see what comes out. But hopefully we'll get to that point soon in the next year or two. But regardless, I don't care if he doesn't prove that way. The silver that he has with the like neon yellow, which obviously, like I said, the camera robs that, but he just glows all the way around, and I love the tail pattern there. Want to expand my snake collection, but recently had a baby and the girlfriend says no more snakes. Well, just wait till she gets that baby fever, and then, maybe you guys can work out a deal, like a 1-to-4 ratio. 1 more baby, 4 more snakes, Go big or go home. But congratulations on the baby. We got a lot of people in the reptile community having babies soon. February, quite a few of you are having babies. Justin, who's in here, is having a baby. Dylan is having a baby, who's been on the channel. Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles, he's having a baby. Lots of babies coming. No babies here. Short of immaculate conception, I'm not going to be having kids anytime soon because I'm all set with that shit. Aaron, hey, welcome. Starting us off with the super chat, coming in hot. First one of the night, so much appreciated. Thank you for that. Let's see. So we've talked about these things. Now, one thing I want to touch on that we haven't discussed yet when we get into no baby humans, when we get into the moving to feed and cage defensive behavior and all of that, one of the things that often happens is you'll have people that are moving their snakes to feed. Now, I'm not one of those people that's going to go, oh my God, you're going to make the snake regurge. Yes, you are increasing the possibility of that happening, but you're talking about something that's like 0.000 whatever percent chance to like 0.00 whatever percent chance. Like, it is increasing, but it's not significant enough to where that should be your major concern. For me, I don't like handling my animals after they eat because immediately as they start, even once they're coiling that prey, before they even start swallowing, their body is kicking into overdrive. Their organ function's going through the roof. And I just don't think it's a good idea to be manipulating their body as those organs are expanding and everything's pumping up and ramping up. I like them to be in control of their own movements for at least 48 hours. Ideally, I go about 4 days with most of my snakes. Younger animals with a little bit higher metabolism and a smaller meal, you can get away with 2 or 3 days. Adults, so I like to give 4 days typically before we do anything. Because as we know through science and experiments that have been done on other species, which probably is going to cross over to these to some extent, it can take up to 2 weeks before their body completely goes back to normal. And so even 4 days, that's still 10 days where their body's still kicked into this overdrive, the organs are still bigger and all this stuff. And when I say bigger, they've actually done experiments with these and the genetic code within them changes to allow it to actually increase in size as it ramps up that production. If you look back, if you haven't seen it, I did a video, oh God, it's probably like it's way back, maybe like 12 or something even, or 22 or somewhere way back. But I did a video on feeding snakes and why you're probably feeding too much, as many keepers do. And we went into that and dove into those experiments that they did specifically with Burmese pythons. But you figure shorttails have an even slower metabolism than Burmese pythons, so it's very possible that these guys are doing a similar thing, if not maybe even longer, which is why I don't like to feed them meals too close together very often. What I missed there, 6 snakes, 3 lizards, but it's never enough, the more the better. We are doing the 2 to 100 rotation, 2 kids for 100 bloods. Yeah, no baby for you, Selena. But yeah, no, more is always better with snakes, but you have to make sure it's a manageable amount for you, and every person that's different. So you have to make sure that they're getting the care that they deserve. If they're not, then you have to think about thinning down. If you're finding you're on top of everything, everything's going well, you've got the finances, all that, by all means add more. A few of you who might have come in here a little bit late, don't forget to hit that like button. I'm going to be super annoying on this in every live stream now, because we got to keep that moving. That's how this video gets out there to more people, more opportunity to show them how wonderful these animals are. I actually have a video I'm going to put together at some point when I have some time that I'll throw up on the channel. It's just going to be clips short clips, and I'm actually going to reach out. If any of you are friends with me on social media or whatever, I'm looking for really, really high quality video. You have a serious construction addiction? Interesting. Maybe I was going for constriction and you got auto-corrected, or do you just like building things? But anyhow, so what I want to do is get a video together of short clips. What is this now? When are you going to Keith's? I don't know, because we were supposed to do that this summer and then Keith got sick, which I think now he's made public on Facebook, but for a long time people didn't know. And so he was sick and dealing with hospital stuff and everything like that. And I haven't really reached back out to him after that to see what's going on. Right now I can't really travel anyways, not having a car. So I haven't really reached out to people to try to coordinate that stuff, because until I can get some money together and get a car, I can't really be a road warrior. Keith's only several hours away, but still I'm not walking that and back. So eventually I want to get out to Minatola's new place and see how he's doing there, things like that. But yeah, so that's I'm glad he beat it too. Keith is a treasure of a human being. Thank you, Mandy. I saw that go by. Let me back up here for the super sticker, I'm assuming, given the color. Much appreciated. Thank you. It'll go in the car fund when I get that. But anyhow, not only in the knowledge he has for these animals, but he's just a good person. And so I'm very glad that he's still with us, and we have many more years hopefully to come of his knowledge and humor and input and all of that. Mr. Justin, thank you very much for the car fund. You got to be careful though, because you got the baby fund. Babies are expensive. They basically just eat shit and cry, and one of those things costs you sanity and the other two cost you money. So thank you, much appreciated, but be careful with your spending. You've been being a little bit more responsible, which I like to see. Hopefully those investments shoot up and you get paid back in the back end, because I know that's the only money I have right now to go towards the car is my investment, which is supposed to be for retirement, but I can't drive to retirement without a car, so we've got to get that taken care of first. But yeah, so Keith's wonderful, so hopefully eventually we'll be able to make that happen, because I do want to sit down and do that video regardless of where the channel's at. I still want to do that. But anyways, I'm getting off subject again. So I want to put together a video, and if you guys have short clips, we're talking like 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds max, of good quality video of, you know, snake interaction that's very, very positive. What I'm looking for is, like, you know, you see videos where I'm rubbing a snake's chin, or the snakes are coming up to me seeking out interaction, you know, things like that. I'm looking to string together a video, and I'll catch up with these super chats in just a minute. Thank you guys so much. It's so very, very, very appreciated. The car market does suck right now. I saw that comment. Man, the moment my car died, I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, this is the worst possible time, because even like a total piece of shit that used to be like a $200 beater is now like $2,000, let alone anything that's actually a functional vehicle. And thank you to Jack. I saw yours as well. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. They're all like stringing out of order, so I can't see if I missed anybody there. Mouse, Jack, Justin, man, okay, I got you guys all. Thank you so much. So anyways, I want to string together a video, not necessarily so much like an educational thing, but just a video that hopefully we can push out there, get a lot of views on, that'll bring some people in. I'm probably even going to use a clickbaity type title more as a joke, and I will include the fact that it is actual clickbait on there. But I want to get people that you know, think these animals are terrible and whatever, to see how wonderful they can be. So I went through today and started moving some videos around and cutting some clips on my phone to do that. But I'm more than happy to take submissions from people. But I want it to be, you know, the animal and the person's safety being taken into account. Positive interaction, stuff that's going to be positive for the community. And I'd like to just make maybe a 8 to 10 minute video that's just clips of all kinds of positive interactions with these animals. Keep in mind it will be on YouTube, so if your children are in it or whatever, make sure that you're comfortable with that. But you guys can send me that stuff either via email, via Facebook, via Instagram, and as long as it's some way that I can save it to my phone, because I am tech stupid, I think that'll be a good thing to do. We'll grab a couple more snakes real quick, and then we'll try to see if we can get Electra to be Electra, which I am really, 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 really hoping she's going to be. And because I'm hoping so much, I know she's not going to be. She's going to be outside of her usual. But let's see. Let's grab a Sumatran here. Hi. Speaking of food responsive. No. This girl has been very food responsive all day. Miss Voodoo Queen. Lovely lady. Morticia is still very, very deep in shed right now. But even with a Sumatran that has been looking for food all day, still very easy to get in there, get her out, no issues. I didn't do anything weird. Holding by the front third, and then obviously I have the other third supported on a bigger snake like herself. But that is the key for my success, is consistency with these animals. Is just making sure that they understand the process that they're about to go through as best they possibly can. And obviously, she is a wonderful, wonderful animal. She needs a cage upgrade, which I actually put on my Instagram story earlier. If anybody that works at Walmart or places that carry Christmas tree tubs see them come in, especially locally, let me know. But other than that, just if you see them come in general, so I know that Walmart's actually going to carry them this year, I need to go ahead and getting those. If you haven't hit that like button yet, hit it for Voodoo Queen. Because she's definitely ready for a Christmas tree tub. Her sister's already in one. I just love her so much. Her personality is phenomenal. Just a great, great, great animal. I've taken her to shows. She sat on the table for hours with me all day, slept in my lap. She's great with kids. She's great with anybody. I don't have to worry handing that snake off to any person at all. You just can't beat her. Morticia's wonderful too, but Morticia's definitely the highest strung Sumatran I have. She's just very, very particular about people and situations, and she wasn't when she was younger. It just kind of happened as she got a little bit older. They do sometimes go through like a kind of teenage adolescent phase where snakes that have been really, really tremendous can get a little bit more attitude as they're kind of adjusting to feeling those hormones. They eventually will either stay that way or grow out of it depending on the animal and how you tailor your interactions to them. And way back when we started talking about something, we got off the subject, and let me jump back into it. I'm sorry, we're going do. That's how my brain works. So I was talking before, and one of the things that I deal with people moving to feed, you'll talk to them, you'll discuss with them, this isn't really the best thing for the snake. The snake is most comfortable in its cage. Eating is the time where they're the most vulnerable. So the more comfortable we can make them, the better the process is from them on a stress level. Obviously, stress reduces immune function, so you don't want to put the snakes into stress needlessly. So this is where they're comfortable. This is where I feed them. Every single snake I have eats in their cage. But what ends up happening is you'll talk to people about this and you'll convince them to stop moving to feed and starting to feed in the cage. And what happens, all of a sudden, a week or two later, they've been feeding the cage and they get bit. And now they go, well, you told me that this wasn't going to create this problem. What created the problem was that person. And that person doesn't realize it because it's a subconscious thing that happens. And so what happens is in their mind, they're convinced, even though you're convincing them to do what's best for the snake and that they want to and they're doing that, they're convinced in their mind that cage aggression is a thing and that because they're feeding the snake's going to respond differently. So all of a sudden, where they used to reach in confidently, they're now hesitant. And it's just that little subtle hesitation and whatever else that just is enough to throw the snake off and make the snake go, wait a minute, something's off here. And all of a sudden they're like, well, what could be off? And oh, maybe it's food, or maybe they're getting defensive because it's making them nervous because you're nervous. And so all of a sudden it gives these people confirmation of what they feared, when really they're just creating a new problem because of how they're approaching the animal. So if you do get into a situation where you've been moving to feed and you're looking to move away from that, don't change a thing about how you're handling your snake. Stay consistent. Doesn't mean you can't be aware of the fact that maybe you might take a bite at some point when the snake's trying to figure things out as you're changing the routine that the snake is used to. And if you're that nervous and you're that worried, then that's a time you could introduce tap training into your routine. Even if you haven't normally tap trained, do that if that's going to alleviate that stress and change from you. And then it also allows you, as you're teaching the animal a new routine, something new where they can say, okay, this is what's happening. Now, the reason why I think the whole moving to feed thing is kind of bonkers, as far as people saying that, well, the animal's going to learn it only eats in this container, and that's the food container. I am not saying that these animals are not smart enough and capable enough to learn a pattern that they go into the feeding tub and they're going to eat in the feeding tub. But also, if we're going to assume that that animal is smart enough to do that, and like I said, I agree that I think that they are, if we're going to talk about that, then they're also learning that part of the process of them eating is you picking them up. You're taking them out of their cage and moving them into the area where they're going to eat now. So the process to them is not just being in that container, it's you touching them, putting them in that container. And so what happens when that snake's extra hungry, or that snake is extra impatient on a given day and it wants the food now, it doesn't want to wait until it gets in the container, it's going to say, well, I'm in hand, the food's coming, let me just go for the food right now, and maybe you get bit then. And that to me is where it doesn't make sense, because you're saying that you think this animal is capable of learning this process, but that it's not going to associate you with that process. And that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And so that's why I would rather do things the way that I do, where if I'm going to feed the animal, my hand is not touching that animal at all. Obviously, in an emergency, something might happen, but it's just about consistency. It's about, if I'm feeding, the food's going to go right in front of their face right away. If I'm cleaning, then I'm going to touch the animal, at least with my hand first, move them a little bit in their cage, then do what I have to do. Obviously, watch out of the corner of my eye their behavior and make sure that they're not still in food mode. Most of them right away with that little push or that pickup is going to break that, at least for my animals, in the way that I do things. But every once in a while, you'll have a more stubborn animal, especially if you're dealing with a reticulated python or something like that. They can be very, very stubborn. So until you see that food response shut off, you cannot take those liberties. And you will see, I mean, those snakes, when they're in food mode, the tongue flicks completely change from normal curiosity, defensiveness. When they're in food mode, they are juiced. And you can just see it in their muscles, the tension, just them getting ready to spring. You can feel it in how they sit in your arms. If you pick up a snake that's still in a food response and it hasn't dropped it yet, you can feel the way they hold. So it all comes down to us as keepers to understand their behavior, to understand the individual's animal behavior, and to be able to recognize change and to be able to help them learn patterns of behavior. And so the more consistent we are, the more we stick to a routine, just like children, you will reap benefits from it. And that's why I'm able to have the relationships I do with pretty much all of my animals, is because I'm consistent. And so they are reacting by design to learned interaction, learned food response. Once again, I'm always aware that things can happen outside of the norms, and so are they. And that's why all of a sudden they can get uncomfortable and strike, because even though we're in a normal situation, something feels different, something hits them different that given day. So always be prepared for that. Let me see if a certain someone shed. No. I was hoping she would have shed, but she hasn't. My T positive female, my younger one, is very deep in shed right now still. She's actually coming into clear stage, so she'll probably shed out soon. But I was hoping she had shed by today so that you guys could see her. Spectacular, I'll take it. My snakes are also in gigantic enclosures and can see me warm up their food. Tub versus enclosures with big glass doors are very different. Not saying it's wrong, just very different for the snake. Yeah, and that depends on the species too. So in my case, my snakes much more react to the scent of smelling that food thawing. And my snakes that are in cages are the same way. The boa will start to pace. You know, the olive pythons will start to pace. The white lip will come forward typically and be very, very interested in everything going on in the room. The rat snake, she's always pretty curious. She's in a cage too. Same with the McLott's python now. But some of them in cages still don't react. Like my smaller female water python's in a cage, and she'll eat in there, and she's been eating great in there. But she doesn't come out for the food. I have to put the food either in her hide. If she's in her hide, a lot of times she's under her water dish, so I just have to tap the side of her water dish, and she'll come out and grab it. But she's very, very reclusive, and so she's basically only out after dark when I'm in bed. So when I get up at like 5 in the morning, she's always sitting on top of her hide, or she'll be out and about in the cage. The moment I go over there and turn the lights on or anything, she retreats. She doesn't want to be seen, which is fine. You know, she's comfortable enough sometimes when I get home from work. If it's just getting towards dusk, she'll be out and I'll catch her briefly. But I always joke around, she's like my proof of life snake, where I have to like sometimes go in there and be like, oh, I haven't seen you in a couple days, let me make sure you're good. And usually as soon as I start undoing the lock, she'll either see the chip move if she's under the chip, or you'll see the water dish raise up as she's like getting tense because I'm coming in. So then you know she's fine, I'll leave her alone. Damn, I even seen you was going to go live and got caught up cleaning cages and feeding everyone. Guess I'll have to... Yeah, you will, Brett, see? Made fun of me in my bathroom breaks, look at you. Hey, I just wrote about us as keepers today. I don't know if I saw that. You have to direct me to that, Justin. Also, when you interact with the snake, more than just to clean and feed, they don't associate opening with food. Yeah. In my opinion, you're more likely to get bit trying to move the snake back to the regular cage as they are in food mode, but I don't know. I agree with that wholeheartedly, Selena. And I know people that do leave them in like food tubs like overnight and stuff like that. But why? Like, you want them in their comfortable, ideal conditions when they're digesting their food. You want them in their cage where they can thermoregulate, where they're comfortable. So yeah, I just think the whole process in general is just not beneficial to the snake whatsoever. Now, if you are cohabitating snakes and you need to feed them, and I'm not advocating for cohabitation depending on the species and all that, but we're not going to dive into all that shit right now. That'll be another fucking hour. But let's say you have a breeding pair in together and you need to feed them, then yeah, you may need to put one somewhere to feed them. But typically in that case, ideally you have an extra cage for that individual animal, because what happened if that pair stopped getting along one day? You've got to have somewhere to keep that animal. So that, or have a divider that can go in the cage when they're being fed, and give them their individual space and let them do what they need to do to digest, and then put them together a couple days after. And that's another thing people have to be careful of. When you're keeping snakes together, even for breeding, you separate them, you feed them, and you put them back together. You know, that rat smell could be on that snake, and if you have a real food responsive animal, you might trigger a food response, quick movement, that scent in the cage. So something to be aware of that a lot of people don't pay attention to. I see that you sanitize between snakes, of course. Oops, hold on. Cancel. Always goes away too fast. By the way, first timer from Canada, welcome. A lot of Canadians tonight. Just wondering about the residue affecting the snake's skin. I don't know of any downside. I wouldn't like put sanitizer directly on a snake, but I don't know of any adverse reaction from that. You know, I haven't had any issues. So by the time I'm grabbing the next snake, it's all dry. I don't use an excessive amount. But I mean, I haven't heard of anything ever in the history of me keeping snakes and doing that. So like I said, I would make sure, you know, you completely rub it in good, and obviously I don't put it directly on them, but I don't know of anything adverse that would affect them like that. Possibly if you were keeping species with super sensitive skin, but I mean, I've done it with white lips, olive pythons. They both have more sensitive skin than these guys do. So nothing that I'm aware of. You know, I do hand wash a lot typically between moving through stuff, but obviously I'm not going to get up in between this video and do that, so the sanitizer serves that purpose fairly well. Let's see if we can get Electra down here. I'm going to have to move you guys and try to set you up so you can see her. The Man of Steel. Who's the Man of Steel? I mean, I know Superman, but I don't know where Superman came from. All my snakes are in huge custom-built cages. As soon as I start thawing rats, they are waiting at the door and know it's coming. Yeah. One day I won't do live feeding videos, but maybe one day before I feed, I'll pop on really quick or something and just let you see how this room changes when I've been thawing food out there. It's pretty crazy how they all just start going buck wild, you know. All of these adults are front and center. So talking about learning patterns, here's a great quick aside. So with the Christmas tree tubs here, so you guys can see these things here, you got these handles. Well, on this rack, you can't really, you can open this a little bit here like that, but that's it, you know. So if I'm, here comes Sambuca right now. So when you, she's definitely in food mode. And this is a great point, because what I'm about to say is why she's in food mode right now. So a while back, obviously when I'm feeding, I got to pull down every single one of these cages to feed them. Every single one of them back. I was like, man, this sucks. So I started just opening the top, pushing the rat in, holding it by the tail, and just kind of tapping the side of the cage, whatever, getting the snake to come over and take it, so I didn't have to pull it down. Within 2 weeks, the moment I put my hand on those handles to pull those tubs down, wham, hitting the side, all of them, all the ones that I did that with. And I'm like, I just totally changed things, created a new pattern of behavior for them. Within 2 weeks, they were already on it and said, you know, 2 feedings is all it took for them to know what was happening. And I was like, shit. So I had to stop doing that and go back to not being lazy. But still, you can see, I don't know if you could see her, but she came over right away. And now, let me see if I can, I don't want her to hit the tub, but that's her urate I got to clean, but her head is right above that right now. She's right there. Front and center waiting because she thought I was going to feed her. All because I opened that top. And so that just goes to show you how smart these animals are and how quickly they can pick up on a change and figure out what's going on. So we're going to move you over to here. Let me get rid of the chair here so it's out of my way. I need ample room to work with this particular girl if she's going to be herself today. So with her, knowing that she can get a little crazy, I have my hook ready. I'm going to prepare you guys for this, and she's going to make a total liar out of me. So what we're going to do is pull Alexa's tub down. And the nice thing about these tubs is I can feel on the weight and know where Electra is in the cage to give me an idea. Now we're going to angle you down here. So hopefully, oh, I'm going the wrong way. Hopefully you'll be able to see completely in here. So typically when I take this off, I have to use this as a shield because Electra's going to come directly out. I don't know how she's going to be today, but typically she will come up the side of the thing here and be very, very forward and very, very ready to eat. So there she is there. And she will track my movement and she will swing. You can see that she's very, very tense and very, very ready to throw a strike at any moment. Now she is using her head and she's going to see that I don't have food, but she's still a lot different than my other animals and in how I have to handle her. So what I want to do is get myself into a position where I can reach and touch her where hopefully she doesn't grab me. But you can see she's following my movement very, very intently. And so I have to be very careful as I approach her because she's very, very adept at coming over her own body. And so I actually am going to get the hook right now because she's not killing her food response. And I'm just going to use it just here, just in case she decides to go. But I am going to just use my hand, touch her. And you can see right away she's dropped the food response. She's still being vocal, but it was enough to break that response from her. And so now she's in a normal state of handling where she's not looking to offer a food response at all. She's just being a big fat Borneo. So she's a very sweet girl. She's more independent. She's not into being handled as much, but now her food response is broken. She's back into a more normal state of being. So I can touch her, I can do things within her cage, and she's not coming at me with a food response. She can be a defensive animal at times. She doesn't appear to be in a defensive mode right now, but that can change if she feels nervous or threatened. But right now her body language tells me she's feeling okay, and that I don't have to worry. So I can come in here. And you can hear she's still vocal, but no adverse reaction. And she's definitely a very, very pretty animal that I'm looking very, very forward to another clutch from. So hopefully she'll go this year. I spilled her water taking her down. But yeah, no food response. That wasn't as intense as she can be. She can be very, 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 very food responsive. Today is not one of those days, which is fine, but she still came up, showed you she was very interested in looking for food, coming forward, advancing, not retreating, following my movements, and using her brain. If I had been thawing food in the other room, she would not use her brain. 0%. She would just swing. Because at that point, there's too many things going on that tell her there's food, and she's not going to take no for an answer. So let me get you guys back real quick here, so we can wrap this up. I'll catch up on comments I missed. Sorry, you're in my lap there. Let me see what we got. I don't know what she weighs. No, she didn't make me a total liar, but she also was not as food responsive as she can be. That snake has levitated and taken some swings at my legs over the years that you would not believe. She is a snake that tests your athleticism. Hey, Lyric, what's up, dude? How you been? So she will definitely test your athleticism. She can move in ways that you wouldn't. I know. I said, hey, that wouldn't. People just don't understand that short tails can move in the manner that they can. They are incredibly, incredibly athletic animals. They don't look it, but they are. And if you underestimate their ability to move, you will pay at some point, especially if you're dealing with a more defensive animal or an animal that's looking for a food response. They can be lightning quick. They can strike any direction over their body. So they could be facing away from you and you come in back here and they can turn and get you very, very adeptly and very accurately. They are loaded springs, and I'm not saying that to scare anybody or saying that because obviously I love them, but you do have to be aware of what you're working with and do always be paying attention. And that's where knowing your animals, knowing their body language, learning how to read it, being consistent, all those things come together into that relationship with you guys and give you the ability to work together, live together, and enjoy each other to the best of our abilities, to what they're capable of and what we're capable of. But yeah, one of these times, like I said, when I am actually feeding, I'll throw something on, let you guys see the room, and maybe I'll just open her up before I give her food and let you guys see how she actually comes out when she knows she's eating, because she's like a fucking Loch Ness monster, man. She's like a crocodile pulling something off the shore. It's pretty wild. See you, Lyric. You definitely didn't touch her. No Electra. It's funny, now she's watching me. She's got her eye put right up to the ventilation hole here. So you can see her eye is literally looking right out through the ventilation. So funny the way that they figure out how to utilize things to pay attention to everything. But her, Raiden, and Sambuca are probably the three that are always interested in what I'm doing in here, especially as far as food goes. If they think they're eating, those three are front and center always. Raiden's always front and center. You can see her right now, right there. Always, always, always. Always paying attention. She's like, what? Give me the food! That's all they care about. How are the olives? The olives are doing well. I'm probably going to pair them up at some point this year, but not yet. Still food cycling them. I've got to apologize for putting me in your lap. Easy now, easy. That's the closest to my OnlyFans you're gonna get right there. It's going in my lap on YouTube. How do I heat the Christmas tree tubs? This room is heated, ambient. When I have females that are gravid, then I'll put some heat tape under there on a thermostat with a probe and just give them like a 3 to 4 degrees bump in a hot spot while they're gravid. But that's about it for that. Your friend doesn't believe that you know me. You've been in my house. I've known you since you were born. Got to have some pictures together somewhere, I'm sure. Tell them to go on my Instagram page. There's pictures of you on my Instagram page. You said yourself you put their intelligence maybe even above retics. I do. I think short tails are very, very intelligent, and I think because they're so sedentary that people don't really look at them in the way they look at other intelligent animals that are more active. You know, it's easy to look at a king cobra or a rat snake or a reticulated python that's moving around and doing things and seeing things that translate to us in the sense of intelligence. But these snakes learn things so fast. And it goes both ways, because if you make a mistake with these animals, you can lose them for a long time, if not life, where they will not trust you again. So definitely always want to make sure every interaction is as good as it can be. And the better you build a relationship with them, the more they'll tolerate when you do make a mistake. It's when you have a dicey relationship with one of these animals and anything goes wrong, as intelligent as they are, sometimes even things that they do that negatively impact that interaction will be your fault because you are there, more or less. And so, like with my T-positive Ivory, she was always a dicey female, but we were good until that day she got scared, flopped, and fell, and she's hated me ever since because I hurt her. Even though she hurt herself by flopping and falling, she was with me, she was nervous about me, and I confirmed her fears in the fact that I hurt her essentially, even though I didn't. And so now it's been over a year since that happened, and I still can't handle that animal because she just does not trust me. And so now it may take me years just to get to where I can just move her to clean. We may never have a good relationship again. So with those dicey animals, it is extra important to take your time, pump the brakes, kind of try to cover every single base you can to keep that relationship moving forward and not regressing. And, you know, one second lapse in judgment changed that relationship forever. And likewise, they can learn things very quickly too, you know, like that. So it goes both directions. But like an animal like that Borneo that's super chill, something like that happened to him, I think our relationship would be fine because we have so much history of positivity that I don't think that one negative would completely cancel that. Whereas with that female, she was always weary, and that just confirmed that. What's the ambient set to? So the ambient in here, it varies a little bit. It'll run between as cold as 78, as high as about 84 in the dead of summer when it gets hot. Surface temperature is usually about close to that too, maybe a little bit cooler just because of the surface. But because it's ambient within the whole room over the course of time, everything's pretty much heated up pretty uniformly. But yeah, I mean, if you shot the floor of the cage in a couple of these tubs, like in the middle of the night, you might even get down to like 75. But healthy snakes, that's not going to affect them. And, you know, as long as they warm up during the day, you're good. But I don't really do an intentional night drop. Just sometimes over the course of winter, you might get some pockets within the room, especially on the outer walls. So I have all the outer walls insulated, but before there was definitely a bigger variance even with the ambient, because obviously the thermostat is somewhere and you're trying to get everything to be uniform. But yeah, that's where that would be at. Got to interact with a bunch of different snakes today at a local. Got to interact at a bunch of locals at a local expo, and it always amazes me just how much smarter my 5-month-old blood python is, or any boa ball python colubrid I've encountered. Yeah, bloods and short tails really are very intelligent. I wish that there was like scientific things going on where they were trying to figure out how to prove the intelligence of these animals. But I think you got to look at it like if you've ever kept parrots before. So, you know, macaws, cockatoos, and African greys are all extremely intelligent birds, but their intelligence manifests itself in different forms. So greys will learn a ton of sounds and a bunch of talking points, and they are able to, you know, mimic stuff and even use things at an appropriate time within a context and things like that. Whereas cockatoos tend to be more mechanical, and they can put things together and take them apart and learn a lot more in that aspect. So it doesn't mean that one of those animals is more or less intelligent than the other. It just means that their skill set is different within their niche of survival. And so that intelligence manifests itself in different ways. In the way you could talk to somebody that's you know, science is their background versus somebody that maybe math is their background, where they both might be extremely intelligent in those fields, but then you kind of compare them to each other, and if it's a science competition, this one's going to win. If it's a math competition, this one's going to win. It doesn't mean they're more or less intelligent. It just means their niche is different. And so I think all these animals are different within their you know, microclimates and habitats that they inhabit, and how they need to kind of think and work to survive within their niche. So, you know, an arboreal snake compared to a terrestrial snake, you know, if you put them on an obstacle course that's arboreal, that arboreal snake's going to smoke this thing. But if it's a contest of who can burrow better, that one's going to win. Doesn't mean one's better than the other. They're just different because they're acclimated to doing different things. All right, see you, Mike. Thank you, Selena. Much appreciated. I'll take those Canadian, whatever they are, the Looney Tunes, WB, Warner Brother, whatever. We're going to wrap this up in a minute, so if anybody else has any questions that I missed or anything else, now is the time. If you have not hit that like button, boom, 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 let's do it. I'm sure at least one of you in here has not, so let's see that 26 jump up to 27. All right, what do we got? That's a good answer. I guess my perspective just feels like short tails are so aware. So yes, short tails are hyper aware and very visual snakes, and I think that's a big part of the reason that people that spend enough time with them see the intelligence in them, because they pay attention to everything. I have a lot of other snakes that don't watch what's going on around them, that don't seem to care what's going on outside their cage. Like the boa, you don't give a shit. You could have a couple of WWF wrestlers come in the living room and throw down. She ain't even going to turn her head and look. Whereas these guys watch everything. The moment I come in here and clean, they start watching me. Now, they may eventually leave and retreat when they realize, it's just routine, there's no food coming. But they're always aware I'm in here. Always. Never will you catch one of them by surprise and they don't expect it. Even in shed, they seem to be aware of at least my presence, though a little bit less, especially if they get into that real zombie state where they're laying sideways. You can kind of surprise them at that point. But other than that, you don't really surprise short tails. They always know that you're in the room. They always know that you're around, as long as you can see. The ARS rack, I got a better shot of surprising those animals because they can't see, which is one of the reasons I'm not really that fond of that setup. At least with the Christmas tree tubs, they can see, but it's smoky enough where they don't feel like you're seeing them so much, or they can get to places where they don't feel exposed. So I think these are the perfect mix for them, of them being very observant animals. That's why you'll find that a lot of bloods and short tails aren't as apt to use hides unless that's all they have available to them. If you give them like multiple layers of newspaper or something to burrow in, they'll often have their entire body covered, but their head will be out in a position where they can see all around. They really, really seem to like that. They're very, very, very observant and visual animals. You know, more so than some of the other species I work with. Watch both ads to be here. Thank you. Thank you for watching the ads. That'll be more car money. What tips do you have in regards to handling particularly flaily, floppy individuals? Can this behavior be modified, or does one's technique need to be added to the individual? So the first thing to do is understand why they're so floppy. And they're floppy because they're nervous. And so you've got to look at ways to build that individual animal's confidence. So One thing that I like to do with those more floppy animals is instead of reaching in and taking them out of their cage, I let them come out of their cage to me, which I've demonstrated a few times with certain animals. Like I have that nervous Borneo right now. I let her come out. That way she's instigating the interaction in her mind because she's the one coming out now. She's understanding that she's getting into unfamiliar territory, that things are going to happen. Whereas when they're in their comfort zone and you take them out, now they have to react to that without being able to kind of prepare themselves mentally. So their decision versus your decision. So that's one way to work with those animals. African rock pythons, that's one of the biggest keys to success I've had with that species. Letting them come out of their cage instead of taking them out of their cage. So much better interaction when they instigate it, when they start, when they accept the fact that they're leaving that comfort zone and coming out. We seem to do infinitely better together. So I would definitely start there and start confidence building with that animal. You know, limit the amount of time it's out. You know, typically you can start to feel them start to get a little swimmy before they really go into the full thralls. So if they start to get to that point, either find a way to reassure them. Oftentimes bringing them closer to your body, which goes against a lot of people's self-preservation, where they think a snake is more apt to bite, they start to move it away. And with a short tail, you're getting it up in the air and away from you in a very unnatural and uncomfortable position. So you're actually making that worse. Whereas if you have them in close to your body, you can kind of create like a baby cradle where they're fully supported. And so the only way they're not going to be supported is if they start flopping, and that's their choice at that point. But making them feel secure, giving them freedom of movement. If you're restricting their movement, they're more apt to fight it. That's another tip you can use for those types of babies. Some don't outgrow it. Some will be that way most of their lives. I always plug Lori's channel, and Lori had a great video on picking out baby snakes based on their inherent personality and knowing that there is nature versus nurture, and you can bring them along, but that default setting is always going to be there. And so you got to figure out what's making that snake uncomfortable and do your best to neutralize that, and just keep having slow positive interactions and build up over time. When they get bigger and older, they do get a little more confident as long as you've reassured them along the way. Making sure their setup is something where they're super comfortable, obviously, as I always say, helps a lot. So all things you want to consider there. Angel, that's dependent. Always watch just for Dan. Thank you. At what length or weight do you believe a short tail outgrows a V70 tub? So I am terrible with tub names like that. I don't know what a V70 is. If you give it to me in terms of like sterilite quartz, then I can tell you. But it is going to depend based on all kinds of factors, genetics of the animal, all that stuff. I'm curious in general. I understand it's different for every animal, but a general spectrum would be helpful. Yeah, so like I said, if you can give me like a quart type for that, then I can tell you. Like these, for instance, are very close to like 41 quarts. So if that's what you're talking about, like Voodoo Queen is an animal that needs to get out of there. My skunk line female is a snake that needs to get out of there. You know, she's too big for that space. She's another one that needs to move up to something more substantial. I just haven't been able to find anything to purchase right now. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Can you get your head in there? Because you have such a pretty head. Show everybody. You guys that follow Rob know his spooky girl. This is sister to that animal. I have two skunk line animals from that clutch, this being one of them. Hopefully I'll be pairing her up next year. We'll see what I end up pairing her to. Her sister's ready now, so I'm debating whether I'll pair her this season or next season. But yeah, so these animals definitely are ready to move up, without a doubt. It's just me not being able to find anything to move them up into right now. Get off me. I mean, they have enough room to move around and stuff like that, but that's not like my mantra of keeping is just have enough room to move around. Those snakes are ready for adult cages. I'd like to have them in adult cages. So a snake that's like at an ideal size for these racks. This guy is in shed, but he's a good example. Let me see how he's feeling. Come here, I know you're in shed. So he is right about towards the top end of what I would keep in those racks. He's very in shed, as you can see, so I'm only going to have him out for a minute. He is technically an adult in age, but size-wise, I would say he's more of a sub-adult. It's the marble male, father to the marble babies. Very, very, very deep in shed right now. So we're going to put him back. I guess on that camera, he probably looks similar size to that last girl, but he's considerably smaller. He's about the top end of what I would keep in there, and then start moving them. So as far as when I move them into that rack, that white ghost male I had out earlier, he is probably about the smallest size I would put in there. Let me see. Like this guy is very floppy, so I'm not going to have him out for very long. He doesn't really take handling very well, but he's much smaller. But he's in there and he does well in that. He's actually been in the Christmas tree tub. I had him paired up at one point, and he actually handles a lot of space really, really well. Especially considering he's a nervous animal when he's out. The fact that space does not bother him when he's in an environment he feels safe is great. There's no reason to necessarily have him in a Christmas tree tub right now, but he is comfortable in that environment. So when he does reach that age, I'll have no problem transitioning him over. Right now he's lost in that thing. But yeah, so he, every animal's an individual. Every animal's different and going to handle it differently. Just 6 pounds, and she can stay comfortably in that probably another half a year. 2017s are, of course, have plenty of room. Yeah, so it depends on the animal. I would say most of the animals in this rack are, 2016 and forward. I'm trying to think if anybody in there is older than that, and I don't think so. Voodoo Queen's a 2016. Ronnie Burgundy's a 2016. Atlas isn't actually in there right now. He's in the grill, so his tub's empty. He's a 2017. The Batik that's up there, he's a 2018. The marbles are very late 2016s, like very, very late. So yeah, that's typically what's in there. Some smaller males, sometimes don't grow that big, might do okay in there for a long time, but typically adults you want to shoot for the Christmas tree tubs, or larger in some cases. Oh, excuse me. All right, we got to wrap this up. Dun, da, dun, da, da. Appreciate the knowledge, everyone. Just got my first blood, T positive from Mark. Nice. Mark is the man. I think Mark's on a little bit of a social media hiatus at a moment, and I think his snakes are with his business partner for a while. But Mark is a great guy. I got to meet Mark when I was in Daytona finally, after all these years of talking to him and talking to him and talking to him. Finally got to meet him, hung out with him a little bit. Very, very good guy. Daytona was nice because it's so far out of the realm of where I've traveled for shows that I got to meet a bunch of people that I haven't met before. I got to meet Rumbly. I got to meet, Mark. I got to meet Matt Jablonski for the first time. I got to meet just a bunch of people down there. Rob and Jessica Ballantyne, Supernatural Exotics. They were down there. So I met a ton of people for the first time down there, people that I've known for a long time and just never talked to. Superman came from Canada. Oh, is that what that was earlier? All right. You guys got 30 seconds. If you have any additional questions, now is the time. Not how many chins I have either. Because nobody knows. They just keep going. Angel, thank you. Much appreciated. Cheers with my water. Appreciate that very, very much. Thank you guys so much for everything that you guys do for the channel. I was with Rob and Jessica. You were on my list to meet. Yeah, so I did meet you. I did think you were that angel, but I wasn't sure. So yeah, no, I met you there. I made Rob get that pixel, which I think was a good decision for him. Thank you, Justin. Thank you guys so much. Much appreciated. Appreciate all the likes, all the comments. Don't forget, after this video goes up, feel free to drop another comment on that. Keep that algorithm going. Feel free to go through old videos, drop a comment on those. I try to respond to every comment that I see. Respond, like something, some kind of acknowledgement. Sometimes YouTube's not great about telling me everything. If a comment pops up in an older video, I try to scroll through if I have time and look for ones that maybe it didn't tell me about. Every once in a while, somebody will leave a comment that's just so off color I don't even know what to say. So that does happen, but not very often. All right, thank you, Brett. Have a good night. Angel, have a good night. Got from you or the marble you just showed. I think they're probably pretty similar. I think the matrix you got from me might be a tad longer, but I think he's a little bit thicker, which is mostly because I had him up with Rob for a while. Rob feeds a little bit heavier than I do. Still not heavy. Rob's not feeding into obesity or anything like that, but he feeds a touch more than I do. So I definitely noticed a little more size on him when he came home from being up at Nerd. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Malice. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Letitia. And everybody else that was in here and commented. Kyle stopped in. Mandy, thank you. Calaxian Prophet, thank you. Mr. Barbell Boa in Canada, thank you. Appreciate all you guys. Matt, everybody that was here. We're going to check out. Dina, good night. Not a problem. I'm sure I'll see you on Instagram. Thank you, guys.